Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through some Week 15 IDP Waiver pickups.
Hike!
So, for most teams out there, they're entering into the first week of the playoffs. We got 5 players. You should go out and pick them up if they're out on the wire. So, our first player we're going to be talking about here is linebacker Micah McFadden of the New York Giants. The New York Giants, as if anybody's been watching them these days, have been quite dreadful. And so the defense is getting a lot of playing time because the offense isn't doing so hot. McFadden had 11 total tackles, 8 solo, 3 assisted. He's been kind of up and down. This was his best game, it looks like, by far. And he's coming up. He's got Baltimore Week 15, Atlanta, and then Indianapolis, rostered at 48% of leagues. What are your thoughts on Micah McFadden, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's interesting. Within the last 5 weeks here, 4 out of the last 5, he's had double-digit tackle numbers. I know this past week was his first game playing 100% of the snaps as well. And just, as far as his upcoming matchups, like you mentioned, I like the fact that those teams like to run the ball. So I think he should have, plenty of opportunities to go ahead and keep getting those double-digit tackle numbers.
What I thought was interesting is he had 5 tackles for a loss. So depending on
Right.
how your scoring is in your league and they reward those points, that was greatly beneficial for Micah McFadden. My only concern with him is that he's been somewhat inconsistent most of the year.
Yeah.
I would probably say 0 to 5%. I wouldn't go hog wild for this guy.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not going hog wild, but like if you're looking for a guy who could get you a decent tackle numbers at the linebacker position, I think he could be a good bet. And these are good offenses he's facing, so they should be able to stay on the field, and also good defenses. So like you mentioned, I think Micah McFadden will be on the field a lot, and those Giants defenders will be on the field a lot. So he should have plenty of opportunities.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. So the next player we're going to be talking about here is safety Deshon Elliott of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Joe had a good week this week against the Cleveland Browns, had 13 total tackles, 9 solo, 4 assisted, currently rostered in 65% of leagues. So a little bit higher. This isn't as much of a deep ad as Micah McFadden. Well, Micah McFadden was at 48% too. But anyway, so what are your thoughts on Deshon Elliott?
Yeah, I think Deshon Elliott's really interesting. You mentioned he's coming off a big game. He's got, at least in our league with our scoring, he's got 3 straight weeks of at least 20 or more points, which I really like. And I think he's going to have some decent opportunities. They got Philadelphia coming up, Baltimore and Kansas City. So I really like that he's been making plays on the ball, but he's just been really all over the field watching the Steelers games, coming up with some really good tackles.
It's so interesting to me that he is doing as well as he is, because honestly, I didn't think he was all that good during his stints in Detroit. And where else was he? He was in Detroit and
Baltimore.
Yeah, Baltimore and Detroit, and then he was in Miami too. So
right.
I feel like, he kind of was hopping all over the place, and then he's finally kind of found a home in Pittsburgh. I don't know what his contract is off the top of my head. If I had to guess, it was probably a 1-year deal. I don't think it would have been a multiple-year deal. But Minkah Fitzpatrick is like the guy that you would think of in that defense. But Deshon Elliott played 88% of the snaps, and it's really Fitzpatrick and Elliott. But I think also the thing to think about here when it comes to the Steelers is they don't really have a very strong linebacker in the middle. They brought in Patrick Queen. He's been suspect at best. So Elliott's getting a lot of tackle opportunities.
Yeah, led the team in tackles this past week, and then also just like, at least in our league, rewarding those turnovers and the force of turnovers. He's got 3 fumble recoveries, and then, he's forced a couple of turnovers on the year as well. So looks like he's not just comfortable with the tackles, he's also trying to, create those turnovers as well.
So the next player we're going to be talking about here is more of a deep league find, and that's going to be defensive tackle Adam Butler of the Las Vegas Raiders. He's filled in nicely since Christian Wilkins got out for the year earlier in the season. Had 4 total tackles, 2 solo, and a sack against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Coming up, he's got Atlanta, and then you got Jacksonville, and then at New Orleans. Joe, what are your thoughts on Adam Butler?
Yeah, I think he's interesting. Just from the defensive tackle position, he's been giving you a decent tackle floor, especially the last couple of weeks. 6-4. Didn't do so well against the Broncos, but the week before against the Dolphins, he had 5 tackles. But then the last 2 weeks, he's had a total of combined 1.5 sacks too. So he's getting that interior pressure. Really like this matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. They don't have the best offensive line. Been kind of banged up. I think. There's opportunities for him to get to Kirk Cousins right up the middle of the field there.
Yeah, he led the team in snaps for interior defensive lineman, 49 snaps, played 79%. So he's getting those opportunities. And, like you said, he's done pretty well over these past few weeks. It's not just a 1 week anomaly. And he's got I would say he has a decent tackle floor. So for any defensive tackle, that's going to be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And then if he continues to get the sacks too, it's just, extra points on top of his normal, pretty safe floor for the tackles.
Next player we're going to be talking about here is safety Jonathan Owens of the Chicago Bears. He's filled in nicely for the injured safety Elijah Hicks, and as a result, he has taken advantage of these past 3 games. He had 7 total tackles, 5 solo, 2 assisted, and an interception at San Francisco. Only rostered in 11% of leagues. What are your thoughts, Joe, on Jonathan Owens?
Yeah, honestly, he was coming off of a pretty good year with the Packers, who also they had an injury-riddled season last year, allowed him to have the playing time. But once he had the chance with Green Bay, he was also good. Just surprised, like, it kind of just took this long for him to get the opportunities for the Chicago Bears, as they brought him in free agency. But he's shown out the last 3 weeks. I mean, scoring 20-plus points in our league, been able to, get decent amount of tackles, and then forced a fumble 1 game. And then you mentioned it with the interception. And honestly, the way Sam Darnold's been going, they got the Minnesota Vikings coming up here. I think maybe there's another chance for him to get another pick this week.
Well, I like he played 100% of the snaps, where he wasn't even
Right.
a starter. And as you get later on in the year, you see this with IDP. And this is why it's important to watch injuries. It's a long season. And so you get these fill-ins, guys who were no-namers at the beginning of the year, all of a sudden are starters, and they're doing very well. So he's a guy, as long as Hicks is out, I think he's a plug-and-play starter.
Yeah. And I mean, the 3 games that he's been in, I mean, 8 tackles, and then 7 tackles this past week. So he's been very consistent. So if you're looking for, a DB that's going to be giving you consistent play and Hicks is out, I think he, could do a lot worse than Owens.
Last player we're going to be talking about is a deep league find, and a guy who you were interested in, Joe. I had to be a little convinced on this one. That's going to be defensive end K'Lavon Chaisson, the former first-round pick who was, honestly a bust. But he has done quite well in Las Vegas here. In this most recent game at Tampa Bay, he had 4 total tackles, 3 solo, and a half a sack with an interception. The week before that at Kansas City, he had 1.5 sacks. So, Joe, what are your thoughts on K'Lavon Chaisson?
Yeah, interesting enough. You had him in the Dynasty League and had high hopes for the guy. But it didn't quite pan out, as you mentioned, with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But he's starting to come along a little bit. Here with the Raiders, and I really like his matchup, similar to Adam Butler here. With the Falcons coming up, just we've seen it. Kirk Cousins is just an absolute statue back there at the quarterback position. He just can't quite move like we've seen him before. So I think there's another good opportunity. He gets a sack in this game. Atlanta Falcons is a great matchup to take advantage of with their offensive line as well. But then, the week after that too, he's got the Jacksonville Jaguars with Mac Jones too. So I think there's a couple of weeks here where he's going to have opportunity to get some sacks.
That was honestly mostly, what got me interested in him. I mean, if you look at it as far as a snap share percentage, he only played 28 snaps, 45%. So I mean, which it is kind of interesting. He actually played more than Snowden and Wilson, which honestly isn't necessarily a good look for Wilson, especially. So he was the second leading snap getter for the Raiders. You've got a lot of attention with Max Crosby that he's going to be taking up. And you got Chaisson against his former team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are in a dreadful place. So for a guy like him, I'm sure, I don't know him, but I would imagine he's probably pretty motivated anytime you play your old team, you want to show them what's what. And I think that could happen. So, against Atlanta, Kirk Cousins has been a statue. So I agree with you there. But then the week after that, you got the Jaguars. So for our league, it's a 16-team league. I think if you're in a desperate spot, I think this could make sense if you want to go Hail Mary here, because it could pan out for you.
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned at the top, I mean, this is a deep league play. This, if you're not in a deep league, don't worry about this, but this is a deep league play. And if you're searching for wanting to just bet a guy getting a sack, I think there's a good chance he gets a sack this week. And then you mentioned it. I mean, I think he's going to be motivated against the Jags, who gave up on him. I think he'll be motivated in that game. We've seen what guys could do. I mean, you saw how motivated Jerry Jeudy was against the Broncos, and he had a monster game. I know that's an offensive player, but still, I think that extra motivation could have good results for you.
So that does it for this episode. We talked about a few players. We try to give you a mix of deep league finds and some not so deep league finds, so that you can best figure out your lineup to get that win. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.